there, my name is Kelly Dell with offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com. Thanks so much for joining me today as we learn how to make a brand new little tiny beaded bead that is made out of size 15 Miyuki seed beads, quarter Tila beads, and 4mm Bicones. I absolutely love these little beaded beads. I came up with them in July and just kind of set the project to the side, and I thought you guys need to see these before the end of the year because they're very, very quick and easy to make. So along with those materials that I just stated, you're also going to need a size 12 beading needle, your favorite beading thread, whatever that may be. For me personally, I'm going to use a white 1G thread today. You're going to need some chain, some end caps, and some ear wires. Now, I'm going to show you the chain and end caps that I use for this project, but just know you can use any tiny, tiny, tiny chain that you have. These earrings can be made as long as you want them or as short as you want them, so they really, really are easily manipulated to be what you need and want them to be. So let's go ahead and get started learning how to make these little tiny beaded bauble earrings. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to actually look at the beaded beads so you can kind of get an idea of where your beads are going to go. So you can see here that your 4mm Bicones are going to go on the outer edge of your piece. You can see there is my Pacific Opal, and here is my, gosh, I think that's the new Rose Peach. Then your quarter Tilas, you're going to see those on the top and the bottom. You're really not going to see them when you look onto the side. What you're really going to see, though, are those size 15 Miyuki seed beads. You are going to see those a lot. So you really want a color that's either going to complement or really contrast to have your piece looking completely different if you want it. So you can see here on this earring, I have 3 of the little beaded beads that I've made, and they, just rotate around, and these are movable up and down. And then I have put a little drop underneath them, and I've left chain here at the bottom and top. The original pair that I made these first. And again, it's got 3 beads there using different color Bicones. And then I put a 6mm Bicone here. And you can see I've left the chain really long here at the bottom. So I wanted to see what it would look like if I just did one single bead. So I wore these the other day. People had a fit over these. I got so many compliments from these, just putting the little bead on it and just leaving it be just like that. So I wanted to show you the chain that I'm using. It is this little tiny, we call it micro cable chain. It comes in a 36-inch section on our website, and I'm using the matte gold today, and it's perfect because it's gonna have to be something very, very tiny to fit in the little hole there of your beaded bead. So no matter what, it's got to be tiny chain. So again, I'm using the micro cable chain, and I'm going to be using these little tiny glue ends. So you can see here, this is a 2mm glue-in cord-in connector. We sell them into a 6-pack, but they fit these little ends perfectly so that you can glue that in and then attach your ear wire straight to it. Now, you can use E6000 glue. I have been using the Loctite glue just because it dries quickly. But remember, just a little dab will do you when you are working with the Loctite glue. In the perfect world, I would use the E6000 glue and just let this sit overnight and dry. But for video purposes, I'm going to be using the Loctite glue. So you can see here, I already have several of my beaded beads made for these specific earrings. I want them to have 6 beads on them again. So I'm going to make them similar to these right here. In addition to the chain, if I want these to lay just like these, I'm going to be using a little tiny crimp, and I'll show you that, and a little tiny crimp cover just to make it look finished. So with my needle, Right now, I have it a little under a yard of thread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up my quarter Tilas. Now, if you look at your quarter Tilas, they're the same way as a Tila bead. They have a flat side and a side that has just a little bit of roundness to it. I have made these many different ways, trying them out, and I will be the first to tell you it does not matter which way you thread these on. If you try your best to make sure all the rounded parts are out, it's not going to matter because you don't see it and it does not make a difference in the design. So don't stress yourself out about having to pick these up in a certain direction. So I'm going to thread on. It does not matter if I start with a bicone or a quarter Tila, but I'm going to thread on a quarter Tila and one 4mm bicone, and I'm going to do that 4 times. Okay. So when you get that finished, you should have 4 quarter Tilas and 4 bicones. Now I'm going to bring these down, and then I'm going to tie these into a circle. Please don't go through these again before you tie them, because we are going to be going through this row of beads a lot. And if you go through these and then tie them together, you're just going to use up more space, and you're going to be so disturbed and perturbed and everything else that goes along with it. So from the knot, I'm going to continue through the next quarter Tila and 4mm bicone. I could go and come in this direction, but if I go in this direction, it's going to pull that knot into that bicone, and I'm going to have a hard time getting in and out of that bead. Again, tried, true, got it. Okay. So now I have it looking like this. And so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread on another QT or quarter Tila, and I'm going to first make sure that all my QTs are to one side. So they're either all to the bottom or all to the top. And then I'm going to pick up a QT and I'm going to pass through the next 4mm. Now, this point, I'm going to fold these to where they're going to be on the top. All right. So when you look down on it, you're going to look down like that. And I'm just going to continue. I'm going to pick up one bead. I'm going to make sure come through the next 4mm. And then I'm just going to fold that one down to the top. Give it a gentle tug so that they're even there. And I'm going to work around doing this twice more. So I'm going to pick up a QT. I'm going to pass through the next 4mm. Again, I'm going to pull this one to the top, give it a little tug so that they're even there on the side. And then one last time, push that one to the bottom. There we go. So I'm going to pick up my QT and I'm going to pass through the next 4mm. And again, give it a little tug to make sure they lay like that. So once we have all of those in place, now we are going to pick up 3 of our 15s, and we're going to skip our QTs, and we're going to pass through the next 4mm. We're going to do this because it will help keep each QT on each side as we work. Because when you get ready and you start doing your embellishments here that we're getting ready to do, they are going, if you're not having these beads in place, it's going to want to flip the QTs to each side. And you're going to get frustrated because they're going to be in your way. So by adding these 3 15s between them, it's going to help to kind of force them for each side. So 3 and go through. And then the last one. So if at any point they got flipped out, just at this point, just flip them back the way they need to. And then add your 3 15s. And I'm going to pass through that last 4mm. Oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I just make a boo-boo? No, I did not. Hot dog. Okay. So right now, this is what your piece is going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread a needle onto this short tail thread. And I'm going to go ahead and get this thread out of my way. Well, if I can get the needle threaded. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pass it through so I don't have to worry about dealing with that little thread now. And then I'm going to trim. Oh, good grief, I'm getting caught on everything. I'm going to trim that. There we go. So I'm coming out there of that 4mm. It does not matter now if I go and I work on this side or this side. Either one's going to be fine. So I'm just going to pass through the quarter Tila on one of the sides. Then I'm going to do a step up. So that just means I'm going to go through the open hole of the same QT, and I'm going in the opposite direction so that when I do, the thread will just lay between hole to hole and will be hidden there when we do our embellishments in just a minute. So I'm going to pick up a 15 and pass through the open hole of the next QT. And I'm going to do this all the way around. So 115 and go through the open hole of the next QT. So that now those 4 QTs are connected here in the center. If you want to, you can definitely go through the 4 beads or the 4 15s and the 4 QTs again. It's not necessary, but it just kind of helps it keep its shape as we get ready to do the next steps. You just want to make sure that you're coming out of a 15. So I'm going to come out of a 15, I'm going to pick up 2 15s, and I'm going to come through the outer hole or the holes closest to the 4mm of that very next QT. And what's going to happen is those 2 15s are going to sit right next to the QT. Now I'm going to pick up 2 15s and I'm going to pass through the open hole of, or not the open hole, the hole of the next 15-0. So again, you can see there, they are going to lay next to the QT and outline that QT. So I'm going to do this all the way around. Each time I'm going to pick up 2 15s. And one time when I do it, I'm going to pass through the open hole of the next QT. And the next time I do it, I'm just going to be going through the 15. So when I go through the last 15, now you can see that all those QTs on the top are now framed with 15s. So I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to pass through the next 2 15s, the QT, 4mm, and then I'm going to flip it to the other side. And I'm going to go through the closest QT on this side. And then I'm going to do all the steps on this side that I did here. And when I finish, I can tie off the thread because I will have this little beaded bead complete. So the first thing I want to show you is how to take the single bead and put it on without any other special things. I have taken my chain and I have cut the chain 4 inches long. No, longer than that, 4.5 inches, because you know me, I love a good long earring, but honestly, you can cut it to whatever length you want. So 4.5 inches, I've gone ahead and I've glued this one on last night just because I wanted it to dry, but I will show you how to add those when I do the earring with this one. So you'll want to first take your tulip awl or anything that you have and kind of put it into the hole that you have made with your little QTs there. This is just going to open that hole up a little bit for you to get your chain in there. So this is going to take holding your mouth just right. You want to put your chain in, and depending upon how tightly you did the reinforcements here is going to depend on how easy it is to slide this on and off. Let me find another one. Okay, so here's another one. It's a little bit tighter on the reinforcement there. So again, though, I can pretty much slide it right through. If you've got one that is just super, super, super tight, like this one right here, I can hardly see the opening there. That's the reason that we want to take and kind of put our little awl in there and open that up. Now, one thing that did not happen to me on any of my little samples, or the one that I showed you today, if you come to a spot where you are putting 2 of your 15s in and one of your QTs kind of feels like it's pushed down under your 15s, go ahead and put your needle in there and just lift it up. And so that will pull it up to where it needs to be. On some of the samples that I made, like I said, it felt like it was pushed down, like under these. So again, just put your needle in there and just pull it up as you're going through it, and it will fix it and it will look great. So I have my, well, there we go. So I have my little beaded bead on here. And what I'm going to do, what you don't want to do is get your little end. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up both my ends of my chain here. And I'm going to get my 2 ends even. I'm going to set the bead right where I want it. And normally I wouldn't put the ends on this first before I did this, but I had already done it. So, you know, we live and we learn. So I get the bead exactly where I want it. And then what I'm going to do for just these single beads only, I don't do this for any of the other ones. I'm going to hold the bead in place. So I'm going to make sure it's where I want it. And I'm going to put a little drop of glue right where the chain meets the opening. And before that dries, I'm going to check it and let my beaded bead head move. So I'm going to come down just a little. There we go. Put my little drop of glue on there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Oh, Lord. Hadn't drank my coffee this morning. I am shaky. Or maybe it's because I've drank coffee. Who knows? Oh. But I'm going to let that dry for just a minute. And then once it's dry and you're happy with it, then you can go ahead and hang your ear wire. And those are ready to go. So when you're going to do one that's going to have multiple beads instead of single beads like this one, then you will want to use some Crimp Tubes and wire or Crimp Covers. So I have my silver micro chain that I'm going to be using. I'm going to use my little 2mm cord ends in the silver. And then I'm going to be using 3mm crimp covers. And the little jumper or the little crimp beads that I'm using today, Lord, I'm going everywhere. Little crimp beads, you can use a 1x2 or a 2x2 will work. So I've got the crimp, a Bicone, which the Preciosa brand Bicones fit on here wonderfully. If you use the crystal that shall not be named, they don't tend to fit on the chain, but the Preciosa fits wonderfully. So I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to put my beads on there. And I'm going to just kind of hold it up and decide where I want them to actually lay on the chain itself. Now, you'll want to do that no matter what, because here, like if you use a drop, it's going to take up a lot more room. So you'll want to pay attention to that as you are adding your beads. Now I've also done one with 2 beads like this one. So you can kind of see there how they will look with the 2, 1, the 2, and the 3. So once you're happy with where it's at, you want to, let me make sure I'm going to be good here. Okay. Yeah, once I'm happy with it, I'm going to hold my crimp in place. And then I'm going to use my crimp pliers. I'm trying to hold it in place here. There we go. And I'm going to use my crimp pliers and I'm going to crimp this crimp. If you've never crimped a crimp before, I'm going to put a link to a peyote, or not our peyote, bead school. Oh, back to bead school several years ago. I did a whole thing on crimping. So I will link that in the video description right below this video. So I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to do the same thing to my other piece of chain. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to thread that crimp on. There we go. I'm going to lay it out and even it out here. I'm going to slide that little crimp up to where it needs to be so that they will be side by side. Lord help me, I'm trying to slide the one that's already crimped. Oh, goodness. All right, get them even. Slide the crimp to where it's even with the one on the first one that you did. This is kind of fidgety here for a second. All right, so I'm going to grab a hold of it. I'm going to crimp it and I'm going to pull it back down because I've seen where it needed to be. So I'm going to pull it back down and now I'm going to crimp it. Good grief, I can't get a hold of it today. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to crimp it. And then I'm going to use my little 3mm crimp covers. I'm still going to use my crimp pliers, or if you have a pair of flat nose pliers like these, you can use these as well. Anything will work, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide that crimp into that crimp cover like that, and then making sure it's all the way in there. And then I'm going to use my pliers just to kind of close that crimp cover over it like that. So I tend to find that if I use my flat nose pliers, I do better with these little crimp covers, because I find that if I put them in my crimp pliers, I tend to mar up the little crimp cover pretty badly. And then I end up having to cut it off and completely redo it. And it just does not look good. So just each person's different, but that's just a tip that I can give you there that works for me. And sometimes, depending on how you crimp it, sometimes you'll have an easier time getting the crimp in there. And sometimes you'll have a little bit of a harder time, just dependent. There we go. And again, I'm just going to close. Now, you don't have to have the crimp cover, but the crimp cover to me just gives it a nice finished look versus a flat crimp or a crimped crimp. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my beads back on here. And again, you do however many beads you want. And if you're having a hard time getting it through, Remember, you can use your awl or something that you have that will open up the holes a little bit in there for you. Okay, so I've got all of those on. So now I'm going to take, just for the sake of it here, I'm going to take my Loctite glue. I'm going to put a drop right there at the opening of that chain. And then I'm going to take the chain and I'm going to slide it down into the opening. And I'm just going to kind of hold it there for just a minute. Just long enough to let it bond. Okay. And then once I have that, I'm going to lay it down onto a surface. And I'm going to let that dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to this and let it dry, and then I'll be right back with you to show you the finished product. So I wanted you to see the finished piece here. I love this color scheme. It may be one of my favorites. Now, I used Pacific Opal, which I cannot get anymore. These were just from my stash on these. But you can see there how they are. And I mean, you can cut them, you know, the chain to here if you wanted to. It's completely up to you. I just like them really long. So there's those. I'll show you here really quick what the single ones look like, because like I said, I wore these the other day and got so many compliments on just the singles like this. And then of course we've got to show you the Christmas ones. My goodness. So this one is using that larger drop, and then our 3-color Christmas beads there. So again, you really can play and have fun with these and make them as short or as long as you want. And I cannot wait to see the beaded beads that you guys make. So if you are in our Facebook group on Facebook, Off the Beaded Path, please share your pictures of the earrings that you make. I would love to see them. Now, don't think these are just for earrings. You can make them on a necklace. You can do little charms out of them. There's just all sorts of different things that you can do with these little tiny beaded beads. So I do have the pattern available on my website at offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com. Hope you and your family have a great day, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.